My name is James Williams, County Commissioner. I just wanted to welcome you all here for the Senator Wyden's 2019 visit in Town Hall. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I introduce Senator Wyden, I'd like to go over a few of the ground rules. Each person who wants to ask a question of the senator should have gotten a ticket. Please raise your hand, and a staff member will get a microphone to you if you have a ticket and you have a question. Your number is called. Two numbers will be called: the person to ask a question and the person who will be asked next. When your number is called, please raise your hand or stand up so a staff person with the microphone can find you. The number will be the last 3 digits on your ticket. When the senator is finished answering, I will call the next 2 numbers. In the interest of time, please keep your questions concise so that the senator has the opportunity to engage with as many people as possible. So, I am very honored to have the privilege to introduce Senator Wyden here today in Lake County for his 932nd town hall throughout the state of Oregon. This town is a part of the commitment he made to Oregonians when he was elected as U.S. Senator in 1996, namely to hold an annual town hall in every one of Oregon's 36 counties. When Senator Wyden was in Washington, D.C., representing all of us in the U.S. Senate, he was a member of the Committee on Finance, Budget, Intelligence, and Energy Natural Resources. He is a ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, and in Oregon, we know him as the senator who always listens. Let's give a big county welcome to U.S. Senator Ron Wyden for the Town Hall number 932.
Give a thanks to James, too, for supporting them. How many of you have never been? Is that working?
How's that? Better? Okay. How many of you have never been to one of our town meetings? Raise your hands. We've got some newcomers. Good. Well, what happens at one of our town meetings is I usually start with some remarks, usually about a half hour or 45 minutes, and people really like it. And there's a gentleman over there who thinks I'm serious. His face got, oh my God, how do I get out of here? No. This is part of the pledge that I made to the people of Oregon. We were choosing our first new senator in 30 years. And I said, if I have the honor to be selected, I will do something nobody has ever done in Oregon government. I will go to every single county in Oregon. There are 36. And I will have an open to everybody meeting, and I won't give any speeches at all. We'll just have everybody take the time to educate me. I don't have all the answers, not by a long shot, but I feel like I'm just looking right out at the faces of democracy. And this will be town hall meeting number 932, and I pretty much flew all night because I wanted to get to Lakeview. I was on the floor of the Senate till real late in the afternoon. I ran to the airport, and I kind of put my head down in Bedford in the motel. And that was like 1, so it was like 4 a.m. East Coast time. So I really wanted to be here, and we're just going to have a good time and have everybody educate me. And let's respect every single person. Disagree with me all you want, but let's respect every single person. So you can't reach over and punch them in the head because you disagree with them. By the way, it looks like there's some wonderful law enforcement folks that don't do that. I do have one little quick bit of business, and then we're going to have James start calling the number. Where is our wonderful public servant, Dan? Dan, where are you? Floating around. Come on up here, Dan. Come on up here. And the reason I wanted to bring him up, and he's a duck like me, is he is, in my view, kind of the gold standard for being in public service. And I've known him well in his years as county commissioner, and my guess is a lot of you have educated him at the grocery store or the Safeway or wherever, because I'll be going there soon. I know people have kind of town hall meetings at Safeway here. And I'm just taking a second because I think all of us would agree we've been really lucky to have Dan all these years just talking sense. And by the way, I don't have any idea what political party he even belongs to. I've never asked him, not interested. I just know he's a really good guy. And he's been a tireless advocate for Lake County. When I'm over, he always is talking to me about things like secure rural schools, which I'm sure will come up, my bill, that has brought Oregon about $3.5 billion for schools and roads and police. So he really focuses on things that matter to people, not like what goes on back in Washington, D.C., who's hooting, pins a tail on the other person and all that kind of stuff. He's just out there for this community. And Dan, before I left, I had a chance to do something I really enjoyed doing, and that is getting one of our wonderful flags flown over the Capitol that I'm allowed to do for folks at home, and for his wonderful years of community service. I wanted to recognize Dan today. Give a big round of applause, and maybe I'll even say a word or two about what this has all meant to him. Dan, thank you.
Well, this is definitely a surprise, but it's been my honor to serve Lake County, and I think most of you know we're into a new era, and I think we're into a good era. A lot of the things that we'll be looking forward to in the future are a direct result of Senator Wyden and what he's done and what he continues to work on. When he talks about secure rural schools, as you said, there'll probably be some discussion on that, but that's very instrumental to our road program and to our schools here in Oregon, and he's been a tireless advocate to get that done, the new plan that makes it permanent. But he's also worked very hard on our forest health issues that's near and dear to myself and many of you, the whole fire issue across the western United States, just many things. Hopefully soon we'll get some good information on the biomass as far as the reduction in unwanted fuel on the federal lands. I know Senator Wyden has been trying to get that accomplished. It's not an easy thing to do, to get that renewable energy program off the ground on federal lands, but he's been working on that for a long time. So it's been an honor to work with you, Senator.
Not me.
No, it's been well, it's about all the things you do for us, and we're just there to try and support that. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Let's give Dan a round of applause.
Let the record show, if the Examiner or some of the press folks are here, that there was a standing ovation for Dan. Okay.
Commissioner, cover everything people want to talk about.
Okay, first number is 424 and 425.
Senator Wyden, Senator Wyden, the Finance Committee, does that oversee banking?
No, banking actually goes to something called the Banking Committee, but we obviously try to work with them whenever we can. The Finance Committee has jurisdiction over taxes, trade, many of the anti-poverty programs, and what amounts to $2 trillion of healthcare spending. Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, what's called the tax exclusion, the tax break employers get for health care. Charlie is here. He just took me to the hospital. I'm sure we'll hear from him in the course of the afternoon. They're doing really good work over there. But there's some things that we all, Democrats and Republicans, whatever your views are, that we really got to protect. But banking law, like the FDIC program, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, that kind of stuff is handled at the banking committee. Is there a question you have?
Well, yeah, now that I know your area of expertise. So as far as healthcare goes, is there anything new you can tell us, any discussion that's
Yes.
happening in the Senate?
Yes, there is something new and something I'm really optimistic about. As you know, Americans are increasingly angry about getting gouged at the pharmacy window. And these prices just keep going up through the stratosphere, higher and higher. You know, we got millions of Americans taking insulin, for example. Well, insulin prices have gone up 13-fold in a few years, and the insulin isn't really that different than the insulin you had decades ago. It's certainly not 13 times better. So Charles Grassley is the Republican chairman of the committee. I'm the senior Democrat. And we've already had 3 bipartisan hearings on pharmaceuticals. Really the only committee that's been working in a bipartisan way. And I think we've really got a chance to stop some of this price gouging. We're going after what are called list prices. The list price on a drug is the price of the drug that's the equivalent of what you see when you're at a car lot and there's a price on a car. That's what the list price is. And the reason it's such a big deal, as Charlie knows because of the hospital, the list price really affects what the senior or the small business person is going to pay when they're up at the pharmacy window, because the list price affects the co-payment, you know, the price sharing, cost sharing, that kind of thing. And we've not been able to get the pharmaceutical companies to tell us what the list price is and what goes into it. But you might have seen, some of you see a few weeks ago that we had all the executives up in front of the committee. Some of you see those pictures and stuff. We're really pushing them, and I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get more bargaining power, which is really important, particularly for the growing number of drugs that are called sole source drugs. In other words, there's only one of them. So you don't have any competition unless the government steps in. Then I think we're going to get finally disclosure on how much they put into research and development and how much they actually put into the drug and its cost. Because we're always told, oh, the reason you ladies got to pay so much for your medicine is because we have to put it all into research and development. So when we had this hearing, and if you're having trouble sleeping tonight, you can go watch it on YouTube. It's all on C-SPAN. I asked the executive, I said, don't you charge a whole lot less for this drug in France and Germany than you do in my home state, you know, Oregon and elsewhere? And he said, yep, I charge them a lot. I said, why do you do that? That's just price gouging our people. And he said, well, it's research and development, which I was pretty sure he was going to say. And I said, I'd like to take out page 37 of your Security and Exchange filing, and it says your bonus, Mr. Executive, is tied to keeping the price of drug high. In other words, this bonus is not tied to making the drug affordable, it's tied to making the prices high. So I think we're going to get some changes on that. And then finally, for you seniors, how many of you seniors use what's called Medicare Part D for your medicine? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I bet you do. Medicare Part D is the special part of Medicare that covers medicines for older people, covers most of them. Well, the problem is these drugs are getting so expensive that even with Medicare Part D, a lot of seniors can't pay these catastrophic bills. So I think I'm going to be able to get past a cap on the amount of money overall you would have to pay in a year. That's going to be a big deal for seniors because that will mean you won't have to be selling your home and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you guys starting off with it. And every once in a while, the timing works, and Senator Grassley and I have worked together often, worked on the hepatitis C drugs, on the drugs where the big companies were ripping off Medicaid. And by the way, that has a real effect on everybody because we all know that getting older is expensive. Even if you can start paying for your care, eventually, odds are pretty great you may need Medicaid to pay nursing home costs because 2 out of 3 seniors end up needing help with their nursing home bills. So I'm really hopeful that that cap can get passed too. So great question to start with. And I'm telling you, it's probably the #1 question I get in Oregon. What is going to be done about these escalating prescription drug bills? And I'm telling you, I'm going to be pulling out all the stops, particularly on the Senate Finance Committee where this issue goes, working in a bipartisan way to finally get this done. It's gone on way too long. And the fact is, we're paying more than practically anybody in the Western industrialized world, and that's not right. It's got to end.
425.
Thank you. Senator Wyden, I'd be interested in your reaction to what's going on in Venezuela, the economic situation, whether Maduro or Guaido is the more legitimate president, and what role the United States should be playing in this.
Well, I mean, obviously, we are trying to play a humanitarian role. We are trying to speak out for fair elections. I think we know that for the United States to try to jump in and affect people's judgments about their own self-determination is unwise. I happen to disagree with the economic approach from Maduro and Chavez and the like. But I'm not going to be, as a United States Senator, out there trying to micromanage the government. I'm going to try to do everything I can to be an advocate and have been on the Budget Committee and elsewhere for humanitarian aid. I have been there. I mean, the standard of living in a country that has an enormous amount of energy is just staggeringly horrible, where people don't have enough to eat. Poor children are everywhere. And it's just immoral that people should have to live that way. So we should be doing everything we can on the humanitarian side of the ledger. Don't think we should be trying to dictate judgments about their elections.
Okay, next 2 questions.
And by the way, when someone asks a question and I've given an answer, if somebody wants to say something back, that's fair game too. This conversation has,
Let me just say that 50 countries have said that they think that Juan Guaido is a more legitimate winner of the election, and that Maduro is basically staying in power by force. And So I'm wondering, what our role should be in that.
I'll continue with it. I mean, that's my judgment of the two. Guado is the one who has a stronger claim to legitimacy. That's just my judgment. But on the operational question of should we be going in there and in effect trying to drive all of the arrangements for dealing with the military, much of which is still with Maduro. I don't want us to get bogged down in yet another part of the world.
Next two questions, 410 and 417.
And 417?
417?
Yeah, we can talk about the, I think it's a land trust for rural schools and roads and whatever else. You and Merkley are doing?
Here, I'll let Senator Merkley speak for himself. Let me tell you where we are. When natural resources policy began to change, I wrote with, is this not working yet?
Is that better? Okay. Back when natural resources policies began to change, I wrote with then Idaho Republican Larry Craig the Secure Rural Schools Bill to get to all the places like Lake County where the federal government owned most of the land, because it's different than like say New Jersey or Connecticut where it's almost all private land. They sell a piece of property and generate revenue and pay for their services. So Oregon's share of that law has been about $3.5 billion for schools and roads, and law enforcement, and we've certainly got a lot of hurt in rural Oregon. It'd be much worse without that money. Now, most recently, I've been working with the county commissioners from rural areas, and Mike Crapo, he's the next Republican senator from Idaho. He and I will work to expand the Secure Rural Schools program and try to create an endowment that will give some predictability and certainty to rural areas. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do. Is that loud enough back there? Can people hear? Okay. Then we've got the whole question, as Dan said, of forest health. Because these fires that we're seeing, these are not your grandfather's fires. They're bigger, they're hotter, they're more powerful. We had fire leak the Columbia River. You've seen them. We see them in every part of the state. Little bit of good news coming. The Congress passed a law that I wrote with more than 250 groups, timber industry people, scientists, environmental folks, that in a few months will end something called fire borrowing, which was really bad for rural Oregon. Fire borrowing basically meant that you do what you could with prevention, but they didn't get a whole lot of money. And then when a big fire broke out, the government borrowed from the prevention fund to put the fire out, and the problem just got worse, which was really stupid even by Washington, D.C. standards. So I got something passed that said no more fire borrowing. So we'll have more money for prevention, which ought to be good and can help us promote our biomass, sector, which we're doing here and in John Day and a number of rural Oregon communities, and should help us speed up the cleaning out of dead and dying material on the forest floor. So we got two pieces of the equation. You've got the safety net, secure rural schools, now the endowment. Then you got active management, which we'll be able to do a much better job of with the end of fire borrowing coming. That starts on October 1st of this year. Good news for rural Oregon. My law
to end this discrimination against fire prevention, which is what it is. The big fires will get treated from the disaster fund, and your fire prevention money will go for forest health and all the things you want to do to build that biomass sector. So, safety net, active management, two parts to the puzzle.
Next two questions.
Nobody's ever been this shy in Lakeview before. There's something going on.
Well, one thing that happened, years ago, I worked in silviculture for service for years. What happened, there was a gap, I can't remember what year. We lost a lot of what you might call older employees that were in silviculture at the regional level here in Portland and in DC. And what happened, we noticed it right away on the ground. We had younger people come in and they weren't requesting those funds for prevention, basically thinning, pre-commercial thinnings, etc., that we had had before, in years before. And since then, we've never caught up. And
You're right to diagnose the problem, and you're never going to catch up if the Forest Service becomes the fire service. That's what the heart of the problem is, folks. We need prevention. We need all the people doing the good work that you're talking about with silviculture and the like. We've got to make sure that we modernize the workforce because a lot of older people are retiring. And under the kind of systems we have today, where you discriminate against fire prevention, at least until my loss comes into effect in October. And I'll tell you, there is some relief coming in a few months for rural Oregon under my law. Not in 2 years or 5 years. October 1, it goes into effect. And I think it'll go a long way to allow the Forest Service to play some catch-up in these areas like you're talking about, sir. It shouldn't be the Fire Service. I mean, it used to be, I remember this one, I was head of the senior citizens, and Gray Panthers and the like. Fire season was for a couple of months in the summer. It was hot in July and August. Now the fire season's practically year-round. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. And I'm not saying this bill is going to be the whole answer, not by any means. Somebody stopped me the other day in Fred Meyer, in the Valley, and said, I read about your bill, sounds really good. Does that mean no more fire? I said, it's a little more to it. But I think we're starting to put in place some sensible tools to really deal with this. Now, I think that there are other issues, and we're not going to get all political here. I think climate change is a real problem. It's getting hotter and drier out there. I got some ideas that I think Democrats and Republicans can support to deal with it. But I think this law is going to make a big difference so that we can really have smarter policies with respect to land, especially in a place like Lake County where the federal government owns most of it.
Okay, so two more tickets. We got 420 and 426.
Skip one.
Yes, thank you, Senator, for coming. Jim Walls, retired from Lake County Resources, but still an active member of the Lakeview Stewardship Group, the Forest Collaborative. And I wanted to say first, thank you for passage of the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Act and the extension of the years on it and stuff. And as soon as we know the rules, we'll be applying.
Good.
The other one, I know you're favorable for it and have written a bill but not introduced, if I understand right, for renewable energy credits for like Red Rock and the biofuels and taking the slash off the national forest. So we're not burning it, we're using it to make fuel and save carbon credits and stuff.
Give me a little bit of an update. We've broken ground and it seems like we're making some headway. And, my view is using biomass from the forest helps prevent wildfires, and converting it to fuel, it's good for the economy, it's good for the environment, and I think Lake County's got a program that makes sense for the whole country. So
we're going to stay with it, and I'm going to use my seat on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. If there are any hiccups in the regulatory process and getting it up and going, we're there to help.
Thank you.
Anybody want to give a current report? You know, we were there for the breaking ground. That was exciting. Where are we in terms of?
It slowed down a bit because of freezing weather, but they're back to construction right now, and it'll be speeding up here soon. So it's going forward. You also mentioned,
I mean, everybody understands, we're talking about jet fuel. So this is something people are going to need. It's jet fuel from biomass. And my efforts were really targeted to work with the company and the community leaders and the agencies to kind of get this out of the chute. And everything I picked up is that things are going well, and there does seem to be a fair amount of snow out there. So
yes, it does. And you mentioned climate change, and using biofuels off the national forest helps with climate change. And our calculations, and I will say it's ours, so we could be wrong, we should be carbon neutral in 4 to 5 years in Lake County, and done it economically.
well, that's exciting stuff, and I'll give you a sense of what I'm going to try to do on the Finance Committee when we get to this. Right now, in the tax code, there are more than 40 separate tax breaks for energy. And most of them are about tax breaks for dirty energy relics. Billions and billions of dollars. I have proposed kicking all of those 40 breaks into the garbage can. All 40 of them. And substituting 3, one for clean energy, one for energy efficiency, and one for transportation fuel. If my bill was law today, get this. I thought about it last night as I was trying to push the cobwebs out of my head at 4 in the morning. Lake County would be eligible for all 3. It's jet fuel, cleaner transportation fuel, it's energy efficiency, and it's clean energy. So Lake County would be the perfect place for the kind of energy policy I think would be a winner for the country.
Thank you.
So we could take the rest of the day off. But I think what Jim's talking about in terms of carbon neutrality is really important. And it struck me that if we go to the tax bill that I'm proposing, to get rid of the 40 breaks now that are really they're mostly a monument to a bunch of lobbyists. And all those old lobbyists were from Texas and Louisiana, and they just came in and they just stuffed them in the tax code. And it cost billions of dollars. Well, there's kind of some new people doing this now. And we don't think it makes any sense to have 40-some breaks that are pretty much monuments to yesteryear and to dirty energy. And under what I'm proposing, there'd be 3, and Lake County and the big project here would be eligible for all 3. All 3 on day 1.
Jim, what was your number again? Jim?
420.
420. The other number is, skipped a number here, is 410.
Yeah.
And then the next number is 426.
I'll do it, my friend.
Well, I don't think I need a microphone. I can.
It's for everybody else, yeah.
What I want to know, give me a minute here. Let's take a moment of silence for what happened in New Zealand this morning. Okay, that act was absolutely atrocious and horrendous. It's a gun-free country, and I would really like to know why all this gun control when you are taking away people's right of self-defense of their loved ones and friends and other family members to push an agenda that you know will not work. Wait for your response and then I will do a rebuttal.
Good.
I have plenty.
Good.
I very much want to get into that now so that if other people want to talk during the course of this, because the gentleman is making an important point. It's one that is shared by plenty of people. And I want to give you the most thoughtful answer that I can. You know, the point that you made about somebody's got an agenda or something like that, I don't have an agenda. I support the Second Amendment. My focus on guns for a long, long time was making sure somebody who committed a crime with a gun would face real consequences. I talk to NRA members and they say they're for it, and I talk to other people, they say they're for it. So I think it's sensible. And I'll tell you what my big interest is. Because the gentleman is absolutely right. This, and we don't know all the details, and he said that, about what happened there. It's purportedly a gun-free country. My judgment is, and people of goodwill can disagree on this, if I can be part of an effort to keep guns out of the hands of people who are on the terrorist watch list, if I can help keep guns out of people who have mental health problems, if I can help keep guns out of the hands of people who have been convicted of domestic violence, I share the gentleman's view. That's not going to mean everything's perfect, but I think it will provide an added measure of safety. It will do more. I'm going to give you the last word. Let me just finish and you follow it up. If we can do more to keep, through a background check system that works, the guns out of the hands of those kind of people, that I think is a constructive role for government. I don't think it violates the Second Amendment. There are lots of people who have, different views, and I respect that, and different agenda. I think you all know that when everybody does a poll, like 90% of the people want a background check policy. But that's not what's making up my mind. And I'm going to put it really in an Oregon way here, and then go right to you, sir. Friday night in Oregon, and I always think about stuff the Oregon way, is really an enjoyable time. We're all off at sports events. We're at concerts. We're sending our kid to something really fun. I went to school on a basketball scholarship. I was dreaming of playing in the NBA. It's a ridiculous idea. I was too small and I made up for it by being really slow. But I was at Duck women's basketball not too long ago. Unbelievable athletes. Unbelievable. If you haven't done it, you should do it. And I kept looking around the gym all night. I do it now when I go to an event. Because all it takes is one person. And lives are shattered. So that's what I'm for. I know many people have differences of opinion. The gentleman has stated his and done it in a very respectful fashion, for which I appreciate it. And let's give him the last word.
Okay, you said about the domestic violence thing. You said about the domestic violence, that's fine. Answer this. The woman who died because her ex-husband went and shot her dead because she couldn't get a weapon because the background check took 30 days in her state. Come on, really? Now that in today's paper, there is an article in here that says gun manufacturers can now be sued over the Connecticut Newtown shooting that killed 20 kids. Really? I've never seen a weapon of any kind, ever, jump around on a pistol grip or a buttstock and commit any kind of a crime. It always takes an individual to commit such a heinous act. Why is it the law-abiding citizen's fault for a criminal act and we're the ones to be punished for it? Sorry I'm blurting this out like this, I'm angry about it. It's not our fault. You won't prosecute the criminals. Everything falls on us. It's just like the death of babies being accused on smokers. Really? I don't think so. And in this book, United States Federal Code 570-628N27 in plain English says that anyone under the Heller District of Columbia verdict willfully deprives any citizen under color of law be held accountable by 1 year in prison and a fine. Arrest this guy, will you? You're in violation of everybody's rights. I don't understand it. If we have a constitution, why are we, the law-abiding citizens, the ones to be convicted of a crime we had nothing to do with? I'm sorry I'm angry. It boggles my mind. We had nothing to do with it. You're not going after the right people. You want to blame a gun and let the criminals go, and it's the law-abiding citizen's fault. Sorry I'm angry.
Let me, if I could, respond to a couple of the points that you made, sir. First, with respect to the law-abiding citizen, and I think that's exactly the kind of lens to see it through. I said two things that I would hope, as we talk about it, because nothing's going to pass here on Friday afternoon, so we're going to have a chance to talk about it. I was talking about people who represent a real threat to the safety of the people in this room. Let me finish, because I'm happy to give you another round too. People don't just get on a terrorist watch list by accident. It's because there's a concern about them. Mental health challenges. My brother was a schizophrenic, sir, every single night, and he died way too young. I was worried he'd be on the street and he would hurt himself or somebody else. So that's the prism we're looking at, not the law-abiding citizen. Second, I said earlier that I've been a strong supporter of making the primary focus here somebody who commits a crime with a gun. So, hold on 1 second, because I'm going to let you have the last word. There's one thing, though, that I think we can agree on in response to something that you made good suggestion. You talked about the woman who couldn't get the gun in order to defend herself because the background check was all held up. In the bill that has just passed the House, it hasn't passed the Senate, there is a provision so that that doesn't happen again. So that if somebody has applied for a background check and the government is clearly dawdling, and I'll get you the exact number of days, but just a few, then it is presumed to have been approved. So in that example that you're talking about, where people, law-abiding people, have had exactly the concern you have, I want you to hear from me. I share it. And if the government dawdles and it doesn't go through, quickly in a few days, then it should be approved, and then you would have prevented what you described as that situation where you believe she was killed because she didn't have a gun.
All right. Our governor, Kate Brown. Okay. Our governor, Kate Brown, here a while back, said on national television, on the noon news, that she wants to ban law enforcement of carrying stun guns, their duty weapons on school property, but yet in the same breath of air she says, I want to protect our children. Well, what are you going to do? Have law enforcement use spit wads and rubber bands to stop a mass shooting at a school? Come on, these things are just absolutely atrocious and make no sense at all.
Just 2 points, sir, and I think then we'll maybe move on. First, I'm not in charge of the state, so I didn't see what Kate Brown said. I'm your senior senator. I'm in charge of the federal side as it relates to Oregon, and we're looking at one thing and one thing only, and that is the background check. So if you would, and I would consider it very much a part of something that would be helpful, if you'll give us a phone or an email, we can continue this discussion. I'd be glad to do it. Let me move on. You've had 3 cracks.
I don't have a computer because I'm computer illiterate.
We can do it with it. Whatever is good for you, we'd like to stay in touch. Okay, Commissioner. As soon as the commissioner is done, we'll get back to covering what everybody wants.
We got a lot of questions to go through.
Yep.
So number 426, you have a question? 426.
Senator Wyden, I just want to thank you for your service and trying to help our country. I'm here today. Last week there was a hearing about vaccines, and there were a lot of people that were there. Senator Robert Kennedy Jr., who's a big champion of safety in vaccines, wasn't really allowed to be a part of it, but they put front and center some kid who the news just propped up that decided to vaccinate. My concern is the Institute of Medicine was tasked by the government to look...
Are you a nurse or a practitioner and you're taking time off?
I am.
Where are you at Charlie's?
Yeah, I work at the hospital.
Good. Well, you know a lot about the subject. Go ahead.
The Institute of Medicine was given a task by the government to review how well the studies were done on the safety of vaccines, and their results were that those studies were poorly designed to come up with any of the results, and that was submitted to Congress. And in '86, we became liable as taxpayers for any vaccine injury, and there was absolutely no liability on vaccine makers. And since then, 30 more vaccines have been added. They're looking at repealing our rights, both state and federal level, to make a choice about something being injected in us. I know some of the vaccines have aborted fetal tissue, and for some people on a religious level, that's appalling. And I just, it seems like the discussion on these is so one-sided that the information straight off the government is called a hoax on social media. You're not even allowed to have a debate about it, and I just wondered where you're at with this.
Well, where I'm at is I'm happy to be part of the debate, and I've talked to Robert Kennedy Jr. about it. And I'm prepared to, number one, continue to look at the science as it comes in. Number two, to look at special situations, because guess what? There are 320 million of us, and we're not all made the same. And thank goodness we got wonderful practitioners like yourself who are day in, day out trying to help people. I will tell you, based on my review of the science, on balance, this has been very important from a public health standpoint. We've seen in Oregon just recently some of the, cases of, what happens when somebody didn't get vaccinated. So I very much appreciate, number one, your being here, and really think that you're talking about exactly the kind of tone that we ought to have. There ought to be a real debate, and it shouldn't just be for today. It should be ongoing, because science and medicine, and you as a nurse, and Charlie, you guys know that, it changes, and there needs to be a way that the best information can be applied to parents and families and the like. And I want you to hear it from me, so you don't say, well, I don't know where Ron stands. I think on balance, it has been better for the public health to do this than to not do it. But I am very much aware of the kinds of cases, and that too often these debates are not even debates, that one side talks for 3 hours and the other side talks for 20 minutes. And I'm very much committed to doing, I call it the Oregon way, which is everybody gets a chance. And I want to give you, who've probably taken your lunch hour or your supper time or your break to come over, I want to give you additional time to share any thoughts that you'd have. If you'll give Jacob, who's right in back of you, your phone number and an address, I would very much like to have an ongoing dialogue. I think it'd be great to have a nurse, a practitioner in rural Oregon who's seeing this and trying to, I'm sure you're doing it. I'm sure you're sitting there in the hospital going, I wonder what we do in this case. I mean, those are the tough calls. Medicine is an art as well as a science, and that's why we're so lucky to have you. And last word to you.
Well, I just think that the vaccine makers aren't going to be pressured to come up with a safer product when they're not liable. I think we've paid over $4 billion out of taxpayers for an industry that's very well funded. And when they were doing the hearings here in the state, an epidemiologist, actually for Washington State, said 15% of babies have a mutation that they've proven will give them a horrific injury from vaccines, but we don't screen for it. And when they take away our right, it's like there's risk, so we should have consent to it.
I will look at that issue specifically. I mean, certainly there ought to be efforts to screen for those kinds of health risks and exposures, and 15% happens to be a lot of money. I also think that out of this whole debate, it would be very appropriate to walk back through all the incentives, and that's something that we can look at on the finance committee as well, because all these big companies come around and want various incentives, and I think that there ought to be a review of those in light of this debate as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of non-controversial questions, huh? Guns and vaccines? Go ahead.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. 413 and 412.
413. 413. Senator, I've been before you before and asked for your support on some amendments to the Family Medical Leave Act.
Yeah.
On February 7th, which was the week of the 26th anniversary of the creation and implementation of the Family Medical Leave Act, and the House Republicans, they enacted a bill for support. It's Bill 983, which amends the Family Medical Leave Act to include bereavement leave. Currently today, as we all know, somebody has a child, gives birth, both parents, moms and dads, can take 12 weeks off under the Family Medical Leave Act. Unfortunately, if you have to bury that child, you get whatever your local government gives you. In Oregon, OFLA, the Oregon Family Leave Act, gives you 10 days off. Certain counties give you 3 to 5 days bereavement leave. So I'll leave a copy of the bill.
Good. And
I would ask for your support. It's getting traction now, and it's on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. I've supported the basic proposition
of expanding bereavement leave, and so I had not heard of that before today, and we'll follow it up. If you can give us an email and a phone, we'll follow it up with you. Good.
All right, next question, 412.
Sorry. So I just wanted to address the issue. I see that you voted against providing medical care for infants that were born alive after abortion. And then earlier you stated you're big on humanitarian things, you're big on children and their needs and all these things. I hear, however, you voted basically to let that child die after it was born. Can you explain a little bit to me about that?
Respectfully, ma'am, that's not how I voted. That's not my policy. That's not how I think. So let me, if I could just walk you through the core elements of my position on this issue, which of course is abortion. It's not, we've had our third consecutive non-controversial issue. Guns, vaccinations, abortion. Number one, I don't think this is an issue for politicians. That's my first bedrock principle. Number two, I think this is an issue for a woman and her physician to make judgments that are so personal and so difficult. I think the woman and her physician should make the decision. And number three, what has come to be called infanticide is illegal in every jurisdiction in America. So those are my principles. I follow them pretty scrupulously. They guide my votes. They guide my work on the Finance Committee. And I'd be happy to continue the discussion, or if you'd like to add anything, you're welcome to do it.
Clearly, I mean, you're very creative in the way you phrase things, that you are pro-choice, I guess, so to speak. So you say it's for the woman and the physician. However, that is what this whole issue was about the last few weeks. A botched abortion, the baby's born alive. Why don't we offer medical care for that child that's helpless? But no, let's just let the mom and the doctor just decide if they want to kill it or not. I mean, that's legitimate. And it is a political issue, unfortunately. It is. It is. There's no going around that. It's on every political platform there is. So you, as a politician and a senator, voted against that.
You are welcome to give your characterization of my vote.
So what was
but
your vote then? What was your vote?
I voted in accord, and I've been in public life because of the wonderful people of Oregon for some time, and have always stood for those principles. And just so we're clear, because I gather you don't share my view that the woman and her doctor should decide, which is your right, but respectfully, ma'am, infanticide is now illegal in every jurisdiction in America, and I would be glad to send you the documents that show.
It's clearly happening, and you're creative, running around language. I get it. You're a politician. It is. It's flat out letting the baby die. But we can help these children in other countries. We can help, the poor, these little children that are, born healthy because their parents want to keep them. Let's help them, but let's not help another helpless one. And it is a political issue.
Okay, why don't we do this? I'll send you the information showing that infanticide is illegal across America. And why don't you mark that document up, and I'd be interested in hearing your view on why I'm wrong, okay? Let's go to another.
I just want to address that you did vote for that, though. So don't say you didn't.
Ma'am, you are trying to characterize my views.
So you voted against it.
Ma'am, what you have said is out of sync with current law. Infanticide is illegal.
You voted, Trump was for getting medical care for these children born after the botched abortions. You voted against providing that medical care for them.
You are trying to turn this,
No, I'm stating a fact.
ma'am.
You are turning it. I'm stating a
Ma'am,
fact.
We do
you
have
are-
to move
You
forward.
are doing your best to say that I voted to make infanticide acceptable. It is illegal everywhere.
You're
Thank
turning
you.
my words around. You voted for it.
Yeah, we're, move on to question number 4. Thank you for your question, I appreciate it. 423. Anyone 423? 406. Do we have a 423? Okay.
Got another non-controversial one?
I run trucks, and you've made, or the U.S. has made some possible emissions on these big trucks. And we're trying to meet that. We use twice the fuel that we used to use. California, at the Cottonwood scales for 2 years, after all that, California even has a tougher emissions control down there. Only certain trucks can go in and all this stuff. And the Colorado state did a 2-year study at the scales in Cottonwood, California. They came up with their findings that has absolutely not changed anything in the pollution rim of the problem. So can't we get back to where the trucks used to run the way they used to run and get better fuel mileage? And because I got 3 of them and it just takes our power away.
Tell you what, you had a problem already. Let me review what you've gone through and we'll see what we need to do on emissions, okay?
Okay.
All right. You know, the question about emissions is a very important one. And like a lot of these issues, reasonable people have differences of opinion. We've seen that just in the last few questions. We're trying to strike a balance between moving to use technology to reduce emissions, and it's something the truckers have been for and everybody else has been for. At the same time, we don't want dumb bureaucracy that is doing what the gentleman is concerned about, which is forcing him to go through all kinds of waits and times and hassles. So we'll review your situation and look at it.
Okay.
All right, fair enough.
All right. Did you put your number in there? Okay, well, we'll get to it if we can.
Yeah, let's
Stay
get
shuffled.
everybody in. How many people have a question, even apart from putting the ticket in? So we can get all the questions. Let's just go ahead.
Okay, go with your,
The goal is to make,
406, does 406 have a question?
the goal is to make sure that anybody in Lake County who had a question today got to ask it.
Okay. I wanted to read this to the folks and to the senator, and then just, you may not have a comment, you may, but anyway, this really concerns a lot of people. And this is a threat towards the citizens of the United States, and specifically, in this case, towards Democrats. This came out in an interview yesterday, and we don't like it. A lot of the people don't like it. It's not right. I think you would agree about it. It has nothing to do with you. You're okay. I appreciate what you've been doing. I watch you on TV. Great. Terrific. You're doing a great job. The president made this statement yesterday to Bright Barn News. He said, "You know, the left plays a tougher game. It's very funny. I actually think that the people on the right are tougher, but they don't play it tougher, okay?" He said this on the interview this Wednesday, before the things happened in New Zealand. Here, to continue what he's had to say. "I can tell you, I have the support of the police, the support of the military, the support of the bikers for Trump. I have the tough people, but they don't play it tough until they go to a certain point, and then it will be very bad, very bad. And then he continued on. He said, the left plays it cuter and tougher. Like all the nuisance, all the nonsense in Congress. This is a threat. This man is making threats towards me and my family. I'm a registered Democrat. If I go out on the street and make a statement, I can't say with zero that a fellow, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, independent, whoever they are, non-registered, that they're going to say, Orlando, I don't like what you said. The president said it's okay to take it into my own hands because you guys are doing it.
So we've been at it for an hour and 15 minutes. It just dawned on me, I don't think I mentioned Donald Trump's name once in the hour and 15 minutes. I mentioned a lot of Republicans' names, though. I mentioned Chuck Grassley and Mike Crapo, a variety of others that have been working with me on healthcare and forestry and transportation and the like, because I think that's the Oregon way. And my view of the Oregon way is that we respect all of those people that were mentioned. The gentleman there, the law enforcement person, when I walked in, I didn't ask him what political party he was in, Democrats or Republicans. I think every one of us is grateful he's here. He's here for all of us. He's a professional in law enforcement. We don't ask him what his views are on this issue or that issue. And I call that the Oregon way. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. And by the way, we've had good Republicans and good Democrats who believed in that. Mark Hatfield, Tom McCall, Republicans. She passed away recently, the mayor up in Portland, Vera Katz. She was beloved in rural Oregon, where people thought she was plenty liberal, but they always thought she was fair and she was good to rural communities and never disrespected anybody. So I saw that quote. I thought it was very unfortunate. By the way, I think I read that the president took it back. Maybe, did he take it back? I thought I did. I thought I really disagreed with it. I'm going to just leave it at that. But let's be fair, I think it was taken back. So we'll have to see about that. But the point is here, folks, how about if we do as much as we can on the positive side to do it the Oregon way? To try to find common ground around basic principles and not have people feel that they're being singled out or being, put at risk. My dad fled the Nazis in the 30s. And not all our family got out. And my great uncle Max was one of the last who was gassed in Auschwitz. And my dad thought he was the luckiest person in the history of the human race to be able to come to the freest and most open country on earth. And you know what the first thing he did? Is he talked himself in to our army letting him write propaganda pamphlets that he could drop on the Nazis, telling them they ought to give up and they couldn't, defeat our soldiers and the like. And my dad was not exactly a good candidate for the army. He had flat feet and a lot of health problems. And he said, I want to serve my new country. I want to serve America. So there are principles that I think we hold dear. They're the Oregon way. I've told you what I thought about the quote. I hope it was taken down. And whatever you get out of this, I hope that you'll see that I think we've got a better angel with us when we pursue the Oregon way, because it's about doing the right thing. It's about respecting people. And that's why all the people where there were differences of opinion on guns or whichever one of these issues, I'm not interested in shouting at anybody and hollering at someone. The wonderful nurse who came, I guess one of Charlie's people,
had a very thoughtful point. I hope she'll walk home and say that her government is going to try to see if they can find some common ground with her. Okay. Commissioner, who else we got?
All right, we got 407. 407. 414.
Yeah.
You're up. It was your lucky day.
Senator Wyden, I was wondering if there's any talk in Washington about taking the welfare system and the food stamp system and everything and putting it back to the state. Is there anything like that going on?
Well, first of all, I strongly support a work requirement as a precondition for any able-bodied person to get those benefits. Okay? The question is, how do we have the most effective federal-state partnership on these issues? Because in so many instances, what works for, say, Detroit wouldn't necessarily work for Lakeview. And what I've tried to do is find the best possible role for the federal government and give as much opportunity for the states to run these various services. So you see that in the Medicaid program, which is a federal state program. There are certain parts of this that are federal, but because, and I think Charlie would tell you this, what works at the hospital in Lakeview probably is not the best way to deal with Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but I'm saying that it should be completely out of the government and let each state have their own.
Okay. Well, that,
so
it's okay.
It wouldn't matter if one state didn't, would be the applicable, like for Oregon or Washington, but they just have to do their own.
Yeah,
put them in competition with each other, I guess.
Yeah. So the reason that we said there was a federal role for fighting hunger is when Robert Kennedy was in the Senate and he went to the South with some of the most conservative Southern senators, the Republicans, and saw all of these children suffering and their bellies bloated and not getting food. That really conservative group of Southern senators worked with John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and they came up with some programs that had a role for the federal government because they saw that if there wasn't that role, kids would suffer, and this is the United States of America. We don't sit around and let kids starve. So my view is your point is a thoughtful one. I'm for a smart role for the states in these areas, such as a work requirement for people who are able-bodied to get, that's what's called SNAP. That's what we call the food stamps, now. And I'd be happy to send you the account of how this came about, because what Robert Kennedy did was a really important thing. He didn't just go down there and say, I'm Robert Kennedy and everybody should do what I'm saying. He took the most conservative members of the Senate with him and said, hey, look, if we see something that's really serious and there are people suffering, maybe we can figure out a good role for the federal government and a good role for the states. So I still think that that kind of concept should be my idea, and be happy to work with you on that too.
Not mine.
Fair enough.
I want it out of the government.
Good, got it.
I got one more.
Yes, sure.
I was wondering if there's any talk about getting rid of the Federal Reserve.
Let's talk about what happens if you, are you for that too? For getting rid of the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, I don't want that Federal Reserve.
Got it.
It's boggling down the economy.
Got it. Well, the alternative to a Federal Reserve, as far as I can tell, would be a vastly more political approach to dealing with issues that, again, I just think we're trying to make judgments that are good for all of us regardless of politics. For example, the first thing that will happen if you get rid of the Federal Reserve, people would say, hey, Senator, you guys go set the interest rates. We elect you. That's your job, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, anybody you want. Boy, most people tell me that Congress isn't doing so great with what it's got. Now we're going to say Congress people should set the interest rates. I'm for a lot more accountability, a lot more transparency as it relates to the Fed, but the idea of getting rid of it looks to me like a prescription for a lot of politics all the time. Well, who would you have run the Federal Reserve? You tell me how it would work.
No, we don't want it. I don't want it. We don't need it. We don't need it because then you can have the free economy running it, and the free economy will dictate your interest rates.
Who would make money available? Explain to me how that would work.
Well, I don't know exactly. I haven't been told that, but I've been reading about it. It would be a good idea to get rid of it.
Because I'm certainly supportive of more transparency, more openness, more accountability. And I've got some ideas on that. I don't know of anybody, I mean, I do a lot of work with Rand Paul, for example, who's been I've not heard that Rand Paul's for getting rid of the Federal Reserve. I'll check.
I think he might be.
Well,
I don't think he said so, but I think.
Okay. He talks to me about a lot of things. He tells me what he thinks. Okay. Who hasn't gotten one? Anybody in Lake County not had a chance to ask a question? Okay. This is how we're going to do it. We got 2 more minutes. Anybody who hasn't asked? Yep.
Kind of back on the abortion issue. You know, these Planned Parenthood videos that have come out have pretty well documented that babies in abortion procedures are being born alive, and they're not just their lives being terminated, but their organs being harvested and sold. And, you know, I watched a video the other day, and a nurse was testifying how a live baby, she was instructed to put a pair of scissors under its chin, cut it up through here, and harvest a brain intact. Planned Parenthood, if you know anything about Margaret Sanger...
I think, unless I'm missing something, sir, that is illegal. Let me do some checking.
Well, I was fixing to ask you to do a congressional investigation into them, and why haven't you? And also, Planned Parenthood, their roots, Margaret Sanger was an open eugenicist, and she initially proposed abortion to rid us of the black population. I've got quotes here from her if you want me to read a few. Hold on one second. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believe I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were offered. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. Birth control must lead ultimately to a cleaner race. We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. So, from what I understand, you have not called for a congressional investigation into Planned Parenthood, and from what I've heard, you take money from Planned Parenthood. So if you're opposed to Nazis, how can you seemingly support this organization that is doing things just exactly like what the Nazis did?
Well, let's kind of unpack this. First, Planned Parenthood, the overwhelming amount of work they do has nothing to do with abortion. And
I'm not talking about that part. I want to talk about the abortion work they do. Healthcare is healthcare. This is abortion.
Let's try to be fair to the whole organization, because the bulk of the work they do is essentially preventive healthcare. And I actually looked a couple of nights ago at like the 20 preventive things that they're doing. Cancer screens, pap smears, all these kinds of things. The overwhelming amount of work they do is preventive in nature. That's number one. Number two, I personally believe that what they and other programs do in terms of family planning so that people don't have unintended pregnancies is just about the best anti-abortion work you can do. Because you tell people, here are the things you can do so that you don't have an unintended pregnancy. Now, my understanding, and that's why I'm going to look at this case that you gave me. I will give you a precise answer to this case where you described something so horrible, that scissors through babies' chins and all the rest. They will make a referral. They do not do abortions. They will make a referral to someone who does. So my understanding of what you described is that it would be illegal, but you are entitled to an answer, and I will get you one, and just give us an email and a phone or address or something.
Could I do a follow-up
Who else
question?
hadn't gotten one?
Could I have a follow-up question?
I want to get everybody in who hasn't gotten one. You asked a question, and I want to get you an answer. Did you want to?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to answer questions.
Good.
Okay, so my question was also, with her question also, I understand where you're coming from, where you're talking about a decision for a woman and her physician. Okay, what I'm thinking of though is if someone has had an abortion, they're very clearly not wanting to be a parent, and once that cord is cut, that baby becomes, I guess, a ward of the state. There's no choice left because it's not her body, it's a baby. And I know you said that you wanted to learn from us, and one of the things that I would like to encourage thought of in Washington is that at this point, we're really talking about babies. And the doctors have oaths to promote life. So at that point, when that cord is cut, it's not her baby, it's not her body, it's not her choice. And the doctor at that point is got a responsibility as a physician to support life and not to exterminate it. And I think if you looked at this, if you have a tale of two babies, there's two women in a hospital and they're both at 9 months, and one has her baby and is born, and, or let's just say, so there's a nurse. We have intercom systems, all sorts of things. You can't get back to see babies anymore, right? We're protecting babies because they've been stolen. So say there's a nurse that wants to steal that baby. Goes and sticks it in a closet. Well, say a colleague didn't come and pick up that baby, and that baby died. That nurse would be charged with murder. So how is it any different when this baby comes out and it's alive, it's just as alive, it's the same gestational age as this other baby? It's not gestating anymore, it's actually a baby. And so how is it any different to actually go and give what they call comfort care to stick it in a closet to die. And so that is like a conversation that I would like to see, because to me, that is murder. This is no question of a woman and her choice. That cord is cut. So this is a choice about whether or not we're going to save the most innocent among us or not. And that, if you're learning things and you want to take things back to share, that is a big concern to me.
So I think the only thing I can add, because when I was trying to talk about earlier were things like family planning, which I think is a really good anti-abortion program because it helps to prevent unintended pregnancies. I'm a very strong supporter of adoptions. On the Finance Committee, I've been one of the ringleaders in terms of trying to expand tax credits for adoptions. So there are ways in which I think thoughtful people can find some common ground. What has taken off all across the country here in the last couple of weeks is this debate about what I believe is defined in every law in the United States, every state. Infanticide is illegal. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to send you, and I don't know if she's still here, the person in red. I'm going to send you this set of laws, and you tell me what's wrong with them. If there's something wrong with them, you bet. I would like to be educated on that point. Okay?
And you know what? I appreciate the things that you're talking about as far as the getting birth control and having that be available for people, and also, encouraging adoption, because I do think at some point that the tide will turn and people will, either be having less unwanted children or will be valuing the babies they have inside them and that they give birth to more than ever. And I would love it if there was more support out there for adoption, orphanages, whatever that means, so that as these children are coming into the world, they can see that they're loved. And,
That's another area where we can work together on, because with Orrin Hatch, who recently retired, he's from Utah, who is very, I guess you would have to say, anti-abortion. He and I put together a program called Families First to try to make sure that kids could stay at home and parents who might have a alcohol challenge or something like that could get help. So I'm interested in all of these areas, and I think that the one area where there's been some debate in the country as a result of the last few weeks is this reading of infanticide, which I believe is illegal everywhere, and I want to show it to you, and then we can talk about it. Great. Who didn't get a chance?
We're pretty much out of time.
Did anybody not get, Charlie, listen, Charlie's from the hospital, and this will be the last one.
Okay.
Great. And then everybody in Lake County got a chance to ask them.
First off, Senator, I want to thank you very much for all that you do to help support the efforts for improving healthcare. Costs of healthcare are enormous. And as a hospital, we're very expensive. And the goals that you're working on to try and reduce the cost of pharmaceuticals is laudable. We really need that. It's a very expensive part that we deal with. One of the programs that helps us is the 340B program. And you and I have talked about this multiple times. 340B is the...
Folks, listen to Charlie on this, because this is like the real world of the hospital right here in Lakeview, and I support him. And Charlie, just tell everybody what it is.
So 340B is a program whereby we can buy a medication, and if anybody's had to use it, it's when you have, typically it's when really sick patients have expensive, very expensive drugs. Imagine a drug that costs $5,000, $10,000 each time you get a shot. And rather than pay, so we pay for that up front, but the manufacturer doesn't give us a reduction in price. What they do is they return a replacement drug at a much lower cost. So we get a savings because of that. For Lake County, that amounts to about $150,000 a year. So it's a really important way that we don't get a reduction from the drug manufacturers, but we get a savings. As you're going through and addressing these costs with the pharmaceutical companies, please don't eliminate that program. It's absolutely vital. It got its start when the HIV epidemic got started. And this was a way to break the cost of those terribly expensive drugs. It's really helping us. We don't have an HIV issue here, but please, we really need that money.
Charlie,
So thank you.
Great way to wrap up. I'm going to stick around and talk to people a bit individually. Charlie and I have known each other a long time, and I'm totally in support of what Charlie is talking about, 340B, which will be an important issue with respect to the Finance Committee and the issues that we have to deal with in terms of financing American healthcare. Our committee, the other health committee, deal with all of these financial issues. Charlie never once talked to me about a Democratic approach or a Republican approach. Never once. He talks to me about how are we going to figure out how to deal with the fact that there he is, and sometimes in the hospital, didn't you tell me a little bit ago, Charlie, you have 2 patients?
Not today.
No, not today, they're having a baby, so that's pretty exciting. But it's a small hospital, and they're really trying to juggle a lot of things. And guess what? When people are getting flown in and the like because they've got, really time-sensitive, matters, that costs a lot of money. So what I'm trying to do is help with that and pharmaceuticals and the kind of work they're doing. And I want to close with this. My job, and I don't have all the answers, not by a long shot, is to get out and listen. And I'm willing to be persuaded. There have been areas where there have been differences of opinion. And by the way, just the fact nobody is shouting at each other and calling each other names, we should be really grateful. In much of the country, and in most of the country, you don't even have these town meetings anymore because everybody is too polarized and fighting. And certainly around the world, you don't have it. So this was town hall meeting number 931 for me. And it was a really good one, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and doing what the Founding Fathers wanted us to do, which was to be heard. And let's give James a big round of applause. Thanks very much.